Thank you for staying with us. Welcome back to the program Capital Market Live on Channels Television. This week, stocks ended on a negative note, down by about 1%, despite the gains that we saw in just 2 of the 3 trading sessions. And on a month-on-month basis, equities managed to gain some 0.68%, as the year-to-date performance worsened to 12.42%. But joining us to review the monthly performance of equities now is the head of investment banking at Cordros Capital. Well, I know. Thank you for coming through.
Thank you, Temple.
Okay, so quickly, let's go through the markets. The week, we were negative. We saw this kind of lackluster trading in a way. But what did you folks at Cordros Capital really notice for the month of August? Let's go that way.
Okay, so August was pretty much similar to what we've seen in the other months, but we had like an August visitation. The third week of August, right, we saw the market rally, gain about 3.5%. And of course, there was a lot of factors. One of the factors was MSCI came out and they said they're going to include MTN on their frontier index. Of course, we saw market rally. So there was a knock-on effect on some of the other securities as well. Okay. For the month of August, MTN gained 11%, moved from 127 to 140. Although this week we saw profit taking. So the previous week, a lot of stocks had rallied, but this week, investors began to book in profits on those stocks. But likely in the month of August, so if you look at the global picture, for instance, there was a story about recession. We saw the yield curve invert in the US. And of course, when the yield curve inverts, it usually signals a recession. From 1950 to date, anytime the yield curve have inverted, there's always been a recession, apart from 2 times. So there were a lot of fears. We saw investors leaving short-dated Treasury Bills or short-dated bonds to long-dated bonds as well. And of course, in terms of our own market, there was a lot of sell-off in our markets. So those investors...
There's a risk of sentiment?
Yeah, risk of sentiment.
On the part of offshore investors?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, so while we saw sell-off, also made yields rise up in the fixed income space. And of course, if you notice, yield in the fixed income space went to as high as 14%, 15%. Although this week, market was bearish, and of course, yields began to tank again.
Is that to say the world is listening to Donald Trump, who has actually said that there will be no recession? Who's ruled that out, eh?
Well, we can't rule out whether there's going to be a recession or not. So the trade war effect between China and US is having a lot of impact on the world. So they usually say that when Americans sneeze, the world catches cold.
Of course.
So now this is not just America. These are the 2 biggest economies in the world, US and China. So if they are sneezing, of course, maybe the world will catch pneumonia. So the impact is going to be massive. Sure. So in terms of demand for commodities, in terms of demand for also investment products as well. So really that's what we are seeing. There's slowdown in demand. We saw the GDP growth for US was 2%. The other quarter was 3%. So growth is slowing down in US as well. Demand is slowing down, not just US, also in some developed countries as well. And for the first time in August as well, we saw the FOMC, they brought down the rates by 25 basis points. So that's been a long time in a while. So of course, it's signaling, maybe not recession, but of course, there are fear factors, there are concerns, there are things to be worried about.
I agree with you. I think that's the main point. It's a small fear factor given the news that came out. And because, again, the investors of these days are really very savvy and very smart, weary of things like this. But let's talk a bit about some peculiar pictures that we have in the domestic space here. It's good you've actually mentioned the fixed income space. We've got the bonds. We had the bond auction last week, and things weren't too good there. 90 out of 145 billion naira.
Under subscription,
So what exactly is the sense there? Is it still in tune or in line with what we're seeing between the US and China trade tension factors?
Yeah, so the sell-off, of course, affected our markets. So Nigeria is not immune from whatever happens in the global world. But in the bond space, we've seen secondary market yields also more attractive than primary markets. Right. So investors rather pick up instruments in the secondary market than buy the primary market. But if you notice, so in recent times, CBN has been conducting a lot of OMO. There were 2 OMO issuances this week. There was OMO issuance last week as well, because there's been a lot of maturity. This week, there was about 700 billion that matured into the system. Next week as well, we have about 400 billion that's going to mature into the system. So that's also a major concern for the CBN as well. So as we move into September, we have a lot of huge liquidity profile. And of course, they won't want all those funds to leave the system because most of those funds belong to FPIs. So we all have a sense that they are going to tighten rates, at least in the OMO space, just to ensure that those funds stay in the country, because it's going to have impact on our reserve. And of course, in the month of August, the reserve lost about $1 billion. In the month of August as well, there was an announcement, an award to a company to seize about 9 billion of Nigerian assets. So all these are pressure points, all these are concerns, and I'm sure CBN will do everything as much as possible to ensure that those maturities do not leave the system or do not leave Nigeria.
So, okay, talking about Treasury bills and, of course, bonds, you talked about the fact that this week we saw a revamp on that side. Would that be due to the high rates or what?
Well, so a lot of people also book profits. Yeah. So about 2 weeks ago, I mentioned that the yields went as high as 15% on some maturities. So some of the investors, a lot of investors book profits on some of those yields. Yields are currently averaging about 13%. So just imagine whatever you put in, you're making decent profits in the treasury bill space and bond space.
Yeah. Okay, so let me take you back to equities. I mean, for equities, you talked about MSCI, which is something that investors reacted to positively. That seemed to have also affected MTN much positively. I think that's now trading higher than 140 naira.
Yeah.
But going by the sectoral performance, what did you notice?
So it was lackluster performance across board. Majorly the banks were the most hit, at least for last week. On a year-to-date basis, the oil and gas sector has been the one that has been the most hit, has lost over 30%. And of course, it just reflects the general poor economic condition. Demands are very weak. Consumer wallet is weak. The banks, for instance, for a lot of them, the results were not too impressive. Interest income is declining. For Islamic results, right? Revenue was lower, PBT was lower, PAT was lower.
That's talking about the earnings now.
Yeah.
So you won't say that the earnings actually shaped things a little bit?
No, not at all.
You didn't manage the shift between the 28,000, 27,000 psychological line for the market?
No, not at all, because earnings were not too impressive. So banks declared dividend, but of course it's what we've been used to. But in terms of the general outlook, the macroeconomic outlook is weak. And like I said, there's no catalyst in the offing. There's no impetus. So for a lot of people that are going to invest in the equity market, it's still going to sound like a broken record. Do invest for the long term, do value strategy, do dollar averaging. But if you're thinking short term, equity might not just be the best option for you.
So tomorrow we're getting into September. What's it going to look like for investors? Equity bonds and T-bills in perhaps on 15 seconds?
Yeah, so for bills and bonds, I expect yields to go up. Like I mentioned earlier on, we have huge maturity. And of course, CBN want those maturities to stay within the system. But for equities, really, there's no catalyst in the offing. We had the ministerial list in August, but really people were not too surprised. It didn't take people's fancy.
Really?
So, yeah. I guess for a lot of people, most of the names that came back, they still had the same portfolio.
Yeah.
And I don't know, investors didn't react to that.
Okay. Well, I don't know if I should say that is relative in a way, because I know some investors who actually believe that the cabinet's portfolio allocation was something really good enough for them. It's just that they can't move further with what they've actually invested in the market. Bolaho, I know, Head of Investment Banking with Cordros Capital. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate your insight on the show this evening. Well, Access Bank is saying that the statements for H1 2019 will be released not later than 15th of September. As we stay upbeat this period, that's something to really watch out for. Thank you for being a part of the program this evening. It's a wrap. I'm Temple Ashaju. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.